Welcome to Stories Pulse. Before we dive into this gripping story, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss out on thrilling stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Don't forget to hit the bell icon to get notified whenever we post something new. If you enjoy the story, like the video and share it with friends who love intense, dramatic tales. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the journey you're about to take with us. In a bustling city filled with luxury, Henry Lewis, a 42-year-old millionaire, had everything a man could desire: money, power, and status. Yet despite all the extravagance surrounding him, there was something missing: an heir. He was surrounded by success, but not by family. The thought gnawed at him. He needed a child, but not in the traditional sense. His two previous marriages had ended in failure and disappointment, and love, he had concluded, was an illusion, a complication he no longer wished to pursue. A child, however, was different. It was an investment, his legacy, his bloodline. But Henry didn't want the mess of relationships or emotions. What he wanted was simple: a child, a transaction. He could easily afford the cost and had the power to make it happen. Now he just needed to find someone who would agree to his terms. No emotional strings attached, no complications. Just a contract. The next morning, Henry drove through the city streets, the hum of his sports car mingling with the noise of the world around him. His mind was focused on one thing: finding someone willing to carry his child, someone who could accept his terms. As he approached an intersection, something caught his eye. On the corner of the sidewalk, a young woman sat drawing on a piece of dirty paper. She had messy brown hair, blue eyes that seemed to shine despite her disheveled appearance, and a quiet presence that made her seem invisible to everyone around her. Henry's first instinct was to ignore her, but as the light turned green, something inside him pushed him to look again. Who draws on the sidewalk in the middle of the street? He thought, irritated by the distraction. As he sped away, he couldn't shake the image of her. It was ridiculous, he told himself, but his instincts tugged at him, and reluctantly he turned the car around. There she was, just as he had seen her, hunched over her drawing. He pulled up beside her and rolled down the window. His voice was cold, direct. "Hey, you, come here." The young woman looked up at him, her blue eyes narrowing as she evaluated the well-dressed man in the sports car. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice low but firm. Henry didn't mince words. "Get in. I'll take you somewhere we can talk." She laughed dryly. "I'm not one of those," she retorted, suspicion in her voice. Henry frowned, clearly irritated. "Don't be absurd. I'm not interested in that. I just want to talk. Get in the car, or you can keep living on that sidewalk." Reluctantly, she approached the car. When she finally sat beside him, the silence was thick, uncomfortable. Henry, however, seemed unaffected. He drove them to a quiet cafe, far from the noise of the city. As they sat in a corner booth, Henry leaned forward. "What's your name?" "Leila Parker," she answered, her voice still guarded. "But why does it matter?" Henry studied her for a moment before responding. "I need to know who I'm dealing with. Why do you sit on the sidewalk, drawing, as if nothing else matters?" Leila shrugged, avoiding his gaze. "What else is there to do? I have nowhere to go. I lost everything. But that's none of your business." Henry's gaze remained unwavering. He rested his elbows on the table. "I'll get straight to the point. I want to make you an offer, something that could change your life." Her eyes narrowed, suspicion still evident. "And what would that be?" "I want you to have a child for me," Henry said bluntly. Leila blinked, as if she hadn't heard him correctly. "You're joking, right?" "No," Henry replied, his voice cold and firm. "I'll cover all your expenses, provide full support during the pregnancy, and in the end, you'll receive an amount that will ensure you never have to worry about money again." Leila let out a nervous laugh, crossing her arms in disbelief. What kind of man makes such an offer to a stranger? "The kind of man who knows exactly what he wants and doesn't waste time," Henry answered, his tone icy. "I don't want a relationship. I don't want emotional drama. Just a child, simple as that." She stared at him, disbelief mixed with a hint of confusion. The offer was absurd, yet something in Henry's gaze made her pause. He was serious. His cold, logical manner left her torn. Part of her wanted to dismiss the entire idea, but deep down, she knew he was offering her something she couldn't ignore. "This is madness," she finally said, her voice heavy with skepticism. "No woman in her right mind would agree to something like this."
Henry didn't flinch. "No woman in your position would refuse. I'm offering you a way out. Comfort, stability, and a new life in exchange for something you already have, the ability to bear a child." Leila's arms crossed defensively, but she felt the sting of truth in his words. Her life was a constant struggle. She had nothing, not even a place to sleep, and the thought of turning down this opportunity gnawed at her. But how could she sell something so personal? "And then what?" she asked, her voice still laced with skepticism. "What happens after the baby is born?" Henry leaned back in his chair, clearly anticipating her question. "After the baby is born, you'll receive a substantial sum to start your life over. No strings attached. You'll be free to do whatever you want." Her laugh was humorless. "And how do I know you won't change your mind and drag me into court later?" Henry's gaze was unwavering. "Leila, I'm a businessman. I don't enter into agreements without ensuring that all parties benefit. You'll have a legally binding contract, and neither of us will be able to change the terms afterward." The promise of security, even temporary, was tempting. Leila sat there, absorbing his words. She had nothing now, not even a place to call home. The thought of stability, of a future free from hunger and cold, began to take root in her mind. Henry's words cut through her thoughts. "What if I say no?" He smiled faintly. "Then you go back to the streets. You keep scraping by, facing the cold and hunger. The choice is yours." Her thoughts raced, torn between the brutal reality of her situation and the looming decision. Henry's offer had no emotional appeal. It was pure business. But the possibility of a new life was too strong to ignore. "Why are you doing this?" she asked finally, her voice low with curiosity. "Why not adopt or find someone in your own circle?" Henry's eyes darkened slightly. "Because I want something that's mine, an heir of my own blood. And because adopting or getting involved with someone from my social circle brings complications I'm not willing to deal with. I want control, Leila. Nothing more, nothing less." Leila felt the weight of his words. She didn't like it, but she understood. This wasn't about family or love. It was about ownership. "I need time to think," she said, trying to regain some control over the situation. Henry nodded, his face unreadable. "You have 24 hours. After that, don't bother contacting me." With that, he stood up and left the cafe, leaving Leila to wrestle with her decision. The city outside felt different as she stepped back into the world. The harsh cold of the night reminded her of everything she had lost. But was this offer her way out? As she walked through the streets, Leila's mind spun. She could hardly believe the choice before her. Her mother used to say opportunities only knock once. But at what cost? The idea of having a child as part of a deal felt wrong, yet the thought of escaping her endless struggle was too tempting to ignore. The next day, as the hours ticked by, Henry waited at his mansion. He was confident that Leila wouldn't refuse. If she did, he would simply move on. But when the intercom buzzed, he knew she had made her decision. Leila arrived, tired but resolute. "I accept," she said bluntly. There was no hesitation in her eyes. Henry stood, a slight smile playing at his lips. "Great, let's make this official." They sat down to sign the contract, an agreement that would change both their lives forever. As Leila signed, she couldn't help but feel the weight of the decision. This wasn't just a deal, it was the beginning of something monumental. Later, she was escorted to Henry's mansion, where she was shown to her new suite. The luxury was overwhelming, but it felt cold. She wasn't a guest here, she was part of a transaction. In the days that followed, Leila adjusted to her new life. Meals were served and doctors came and went. Henry kept his distance, his cold demeanor never wavering. But Leila couldn't shake the feeling that this was all a game to him, one that she had no choice but to play.